doing?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Staying out of business.
Yeah.
Still waiting for a date on his.
Yeah.
You know, I can't go till they have time.
Oh. What's the hold up?
Oh, just a long list of people waiting. Months. I knew that there would be at least a couple of months. Well, I'm going up to Copley and they're really good, but they have a long wait. You know.
Let's do these mics.
I need those red cards over there. No, I don't need any of those. Yeah, that needs to be out of the way. When you're monitoring, you need it when you get that out of the way. So I got some emails.
There's the hidden little on-off switch.
Inside, yeah.
No, but the thing is we're only going to get the output of one, of channel one.
No, it's because
Is there a mixing done in here?
yeah, see, channel 1 is channel 1 here.
It says channel 4 in it.
I don't have an agenda. I don't know.
Because it's on. Okay, so see, that must be mic number 4.
Yeah, so should we, oh, it says 4, you're right, okay. So this one works. I thought I picked up the one that said 1, I didn't read it good enough.
Okay, so now this, see, 3 is on. See? So this is working. This is
Yeah, but I think we got to draw the output from those other channels, but it's only one, I think.
well, no, we're going to have all 4 mics.
Does this mix it to channel 1 out?
Well, I think this is isn't this the outlet
Yeah, it's the out.
into here?
It's the out, but is that coming from just channel 1?
I don't think so.
So I'm going to move this and see what happens.
And I don't see Gene's car. I don't know if she's here or not. But if she's not here, since legislator went late, she and Carol may not be here.
Now, let's see if
Carol's not.
this
See, now
Okay, I
one's
know
on.
Bob is running late. 6:30 he was in Waterbury. Well, he texted me. He
yeah,
called
that's,
me.
oh, that's maybe because that's done.
I'm running
This is
late.
happening.
And I said,
Okay,
well,
there.
speakers to have to jockey two mics, do you?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like you know, I mean,
Liberal arts, yeah. Well-rounded education.
you're not going to go to the speaker.
I can't do it. You can do it. Yeah, well, she's done it for years.
I know it's not good for you.
Sure.
They really do. So is this back?
Yep. Oh, you got nobody with you? Oh, you got both kids? Yeah. And no help?
This microphone is live, so whatever you're talking about.
Should we move?
So I'm just telling you.
They'll all hear me? Maybe I want to say something. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. I'm just letting you know.
I appreciate it. Last school I ended up with. About 1 year.
That's what life. Work for a law firm. It's apples and apples. What? Not a lot
All right, so.
When you drive out of the streets and go on to North
All right. If I can have everybody's attention, we'll slowly get to our seats and come together for this most important NPA meeting of the year, in my personal opinion. I'm not supposed to espouse any personal opinions tonight because I am the moderator. All right, people slowly come to their seats. If you want to have a quick conversation, please take the conversation outside so that we can continue the meeting here. We're trying to be as punctual as possible. All right, I'd like to welcome everyone tonight to the Ward 4-7 NPA meeting. There is an agenda on the table in the front of the room, or the back of the room, from my perspective. And basically, I've been asked to do several things first at the start of the meeting. First is to read certain ground rules. Now, even though I'm a university professor, here I'm a normal citizen, so we have some very simple ground rules to read. One is listen to other people speaking. You're here to hear what other people have to say, speak to the candidates tonight. So the goal is to hear what they have to say. Second, to respect the agenda. We've worked very hard. People have taken a lot of time out of their day, their evening, to be here tonight, to share their views, to participate in our democracy. So please respect the agenda. And Linda over here will be one making sure that we definitely pay respect to the agenda. Last but not least, share your opinion politely and treat people respectfully. These are the ground rules we ask of you tonight. Now, as we always start in an NPA meeting, we start with introductions. So we will go around the room, and it's very important because we're recording this event on Facebook Live as well as on Channel 17. It's important that when anyone speaks tonight, that you make sure you have a microphone in front of your face. Otherwise, the people who are out there watching the recordings will not be able to hear what you are saying. And because I think there are a lot more people watching this offline than here in the room, it's very important that they hear everything you have to say. So please make sure you have a microphone, and we will have people going around the room with mics to make sure you are heard. So with that, we'll start with the introductions, and as I said, wait for the announcements until everyone has introduced themselves. My name, for example, is Eric Munson, and I am from Ward 4.
Linda Del Duco, Ward 7, and I'm the timekeeper for tonight.
Mary Pirro, Ward 7, and I'm looking for comments.
Ali Gang, Ward 7, City Councilor.
Matt Robert, Ward 7, and Stanley.
Rex Scott, Ward 7.
Bob Hoover, Road 4.
Maricela Constantino, Ward 7.
Frank Bozak. Pointed at. Pardon? Pointed at. Oh. Frank Bozak, Ward 4.
Bridget Bozak, Ward 4.
Tricia O'Kane, Ward 7.
Karen Butt, Ward 7.
Sydney Akeley, Lucido.
Martha Malpas, Ward 7.
Keith White, Ward 7.
Sydney White, Ward 7.
Dan Herman, Ward 7.
Joanne Hunt, Ward 4.
Tim Ash, State Senator, Interloper, Ward 3.
Dave Hartnett, Ward 4.
Brandon Paulino, North District City Council.
Christy Swanson, Ward 7. Mara Wilson, Ward 4.
Kenny Christensen, Ward 7.
Travis Braddock, Ward 7.
Rena Driscoll, Ward 4.
Robert Briscoe Johnson, I'm Ward 7. And Tim, you used to be Ward 7.
I will also, Jeff Comstock, Ward 7 Steering Committee, I also bring to your attention that we're circulating the sign-up sheet, so when it comes around, please sign in. We're getting a good attendance. Thank you.
Kelly Ketzer, Ward 4. Paul Bushner, Ward 4. Chad Kearney, Ward 4. Jake Schumann, Ward 7.
Chelsea Staff, Ward 4.
Al Luigi, Ward 7.
Sarah Carpenter, Ward 4, candidate for City Council.
Merle Weimer, Ward 6.
Brian Williams, Ward 7.
Williams, Ward 7.
Bob Hirondine, Ward 4. Sounds like the commission.
Indra Moydike, Ward 7. Bruce McNally, Ward 7. Molly Moydike, Ward 7. Deb Lane, Ward 4.
Isaac Robbins, Ward 4.
Erica Reddick, Ward 4, and City Council candidate. Nancy Comstock, Ward 7. Last but not least.
Jeff Clark, Ward 4, and Steering Committee.
Last but not least in the middle.
Alex Yar, Ward 4.
Janet Patterson, Ward 7. Sal Millichamp, Ward 4. Jackie Schultz, Ward 4.
Bernie Carver, Ward 4.
Nancy Ellis, Ward 4.
Russell Ellis, Ward 4.
Deb Boughton, Ward 7.
All right, have we missed anybody who have not had a chance to introduce themselves? Just a moment, I'll leave him. And you are?
Jim Shea, Ward 7.
All right. Thank you very much, and do give everyone a round of applause for making it out tonight from both Ward 4 and 7 and 6. I'm a firm believer in clapping all the time. Next, very important, announcements. Now, these are announcements not about the current candidate, but these are announcements for important community events coming up. Does anyone have any community announcements for community events that they'd like to announce at this point in time? Yes. Please, first you get the mic and you can speak.
This Friday, if anybody's interested, we're doing a public meeting down at the South Champlain Park, which is on South Champlain Street down by August 1st. We're doing some improvements to that park. We're gonna have hot chocolate and s'mores, so I know it's not this Ward, but you might be interested or know somebody. And come on down and join us and give some input on that little tiny pocket park.
So it is expected from us to be civil and respect each other. But I think this announcement is important.
Mira Weinberger turned 50 yesterday. So we would like you to please give him a round of applause. After that,
All right, Eden.
Hi. So on March 19th, the New North End Book Club will be meeting at Simple Roots. We'll be reading Hearsay by Madeline Miller.
All right, is there anyone else with a community service announcement they would like to make at this time? If not, then I will ask the elected officials who would like to speak in front of the room. These are the currently elected officials. If you'd like to come to the front of the room, we've lined up a long series of tables here. And then we will have, according to the agenda, 40 minutes for elected officials. As I said, Linda will keep an eye on the time, so if you could please come up to the front of the room now.
Isn't it supposed to be just those people, the agenda?
All elected officials.
Oh.
Yeah, but you can't because that's not fair to the other people you're running as So picking up is a good candidate or a form or right. Do that. Okay, do that.
All right.
You started one in and just go right now.
I think we'll.
You each get 5 minutes and I'll shut you off.
Okay, so let's go to our special guest. Unanticipated. Nash will start with you. Yes. All right. And keep an eye on Linda. She will tell you when the time is up.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm not going to take up a full 5 minutes. My name is Tim Ash. I'm the president of the Senate, but I'm a state senator, live on Lakeview Terrace. This is about the midway point of the legislative session, and so it's fast and furious. We have a spike at the midpoint, and then things settle down a little bit, and then it spikes up again near the end of the year. And I'll just say a couple things that are going on right now. I'm sure this feedback is.
It's not.
Something about Kurt is defraying the feedback. So just 1 minute of recent news. Just this week, the House of Representatives followed the Senate suit and overrode Governor Scott's veto of the minimum wage bill. And I'll just say on a personal note, that has been a long time coming, and even though it's quite modest, over 2 years going to $12.55, it's going to lift the pay of about 40,000 people directly over the next 2 years. Most of those people work full-time. Many of them are the head of a household, and almost none of them are teenagers, despite the mythology. So I believe that on a foundational level, this is a huge anti-poverty measure. And while the paid family leave bill in the House fell one vote short, I'm really proud that we got this one done. There are some other issues that I know people in Burlington in particular have really advocated passionately for, including some of the people on this in front of me right now. Firearms safety. We had historic legislation just 2 years ago. Last year, our waiting period for firearm purchase bill got vetoed. We're still trying to find a path forward on that, while we also look at other strategies to reduce suicide by firearm and to protect victims of domestic violence from firearms. So this is really important public safety work. And I'll conclude on this so to not monopolize the time. Burlington, as a community, stepped out before virtually any others in trying to address water quality from a municipal point of view by creating dedicated staff people who focus on stormwater issues, and the Department of Public Works working on water quality. That has really informed the statewide efforts we have made over the last few years. So just three quick high points there. One is last year we passed what had eluded previous legislatures and governors, long-term water quality funding statewide. That's starting to roll out now, which is really positive. Two, drinking water sources for public drinking water all throughout the state. We have started testing it at the most strict standards, I believe, in the country for PFOA chemicals. If you followed what happened in Bennington, what we knew was that that would not be the only community that had these kinds of chemicals. We've already found 3 other public drinking water sources in the state who have these carcinogenic chemicals in them. And the only thing, as I say, worse than having it in the water is having it in there and not knowing about it. And then third, we're now testing every single school and child care facility water tap in the state for the presence of lead at the strictest standards in America. So every single parent in Burlington and across the state will know their kid has been sucking down lead while they're at either school or child care all day. So thank you very much. I do see a question if that's the way this is going to roll.
Yes, it is, because you're a state person versus the local people who could ask you questions.
Usually I just get abuse, not special treatment.
So let's roll, Tim. Thank you for those remarks. My name is Bridget Bozak, and my question is because I'm a member of the board for Steps to End Domestic Violence. So thank you, and more thank you. What's the status of H160? The firearms in restraining orders.
So it's H610, so that's why I looked a little puzzled. H610 is a bill with very specific set of firearm safety measures that focus on primarily on people who are in domestic violence situations, to make sure that immediately firearms are removed from the home, because we know especially women, but not always women, are very vulnerable in those immediate days after police respond to a domestic violence case. The House just passed that, so it's come over to the Senate, and we'll start taking it up after our town meeting break, which is next week. That bill also includes a provision called the Charleston loophole, closing that. And just briefly, for those of you who don't know, they call it the Charleston loophole for very tragic reasons. The way our background check system works in our country, if someone goes to purchase a firearm and the background check system hasn't given a green light to allow the firearm purchase to proceed, within 3 days, the seller has the option to go ahead and sell it anyways. That is how the fella in Charleston who shot up that church was able to access the firearms. What we are proposing to do is close that loophole so that no firearm will be sold by a licensed dealer unless the green light has gone, even if that takes more than 3 days. If it takes a week, it takes 2 weeks. So that legislation will get taken up by the Senate, presumably in about 2 weeks. Okay, thank you all.
Good evening, everybody. I thought I would come and talk tonight mostly about the ballot items, and the municipal ballot items that you'll have a chance to weigh in on next Tuesday. If you haven't already voted early, there are 3 of them this year, and I'll try to summarize them quickly and then open the floor if you have questions about them. And I do know there is a later tonight presentation for those of you who stick around from the fire department that addresses one of them, and that is about question number 2. And this is the first increase in the public safety tax in about 20 years, and the 15 years, I'm sorry. And the basically there's a number of things that are addressed in this ballot item, but for the largest piece of it, and one that addresses a concern or an issue that we've heard out here for a long time, is a yes vote on ballot question number 2 will mean that there will be a staff ambulance here in New York. We have reached the point in our kind of growth and evolution of the city where the city council unanimously and I believe that a 3rd ambulance is warranted. There is cost involved in it. It will involve hiring 9 new EMT firefighters, staffing 3 full shifts of ambulance staffing. The way I hope that people think about the costs and the kind of context you put the costs into is to look over a little bit longer period of time. It's about, a yes vote on this will be a 3.5% increase on your municipal taxes. So if you look at the municipal piece of your property tax bill, it's about 30% of your overall property tax bill. And this will be a 3.5% increase on that. It amounts to a little less than $70 for the median price annually. The context that I'd ask you to consider as you decide whether or not to vote yes on this is to look a little broader at the last 9 budget years. It's sort of hard for me to believe this sometimes. It's a 9th city budget that I've been responsible for, and over those 9 years, we have kept the growth in operating taxes for the city, property taxes for the city, to under the rate of inflation. We're actually well under the rate of inflation right now. If this one passes, and ballot question number 3, I'll move to that, also passes, we will still be below the rate of inflation. Ballot question number 3 is about funding the Housing Trust Fund. About 20 years ago, there was an advisory vote that advised the city council to raise the tax rate and spend a penny a year. So basically take a penny for the property taxes and put it into the Housing Trust Fund. That was a very innovative and forward-looking thing to do at the time. There were very few communities in the country that had local sources of funding affordable housing like that. That value has been eroded over time, such that we are down to about half the value of what the initial vote was. This would restore that. I see the time's up. And
You've got 2 minutes for questions.
Take questions. Eric and I have had a big debate about this in public already, so is there anyone else who wants to weigh in before?
Do we get a microphone over here for the questions?
He's the mic runner.
My question is, given that the city has turned down reinvesting in shores, what will that $2.5 or $5 million be used for now that we have it?
Great. So there's approximately $7 million, $6.5 to $7 million that is coming back from the BT as a result of that transaction. There's pretty broad consensus that about $1.5 million of that would be used to address some BT-related items. Doesn't have anything to do with the lost funds, but there are sort of other BT-related liabilities. So one is the fact that a redevelopment of the Memorial Auditorium could require us, under some scenarios, to have to move a lot of Burlington Telecom equipment. So there would be a big cost involved with that. There's also some outstanding pension liability related to the former city workers. So that's where about $1.5 million would go. The remaining $5 million, a decision has not been made yet. And now that it's clear that the council decided not to invest, I expect there will be starting to have that debate.
So will the residents will we get to vote on where the extra $5 million goes?
Probably, that is not typically the way we make investment decisions.
It's our money, though.
Yeah, and you delegate to, the way our representative government works, it's generally through the city council and the budgeting process, the decision like that would be made. And but it's possible that we could choose to do it differently with this. And we have just started to kind of talk that through.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Couple of issues. I heard somebody in the audience say higher ground. Higher ground, I'm excited to the fact that higher ground is potentially moving over to Burton. There's a lot of issues over there. They're in the permitting process. There are issues that South Burlington is concerned about. Their city council and neighborhood right nearby is concerned about transportation issues, parking issues, noise issues. and they have now potentially are looking into going into Memorial Auditorium. That's a long process ahead, but I think that is an exciting possibility. Memorial is sitting vacant right now, as we know, and the city needs to make decisions with Memorial. That whole block is right now a wasted opportunity. It's called the gateway entrance into the city. Memorial is sitting vacant. There's a building in between, and then there's the Midtown Motel, which was not that great when it was running, and it's even worse now that it's been vacant for a few years. So the city, I think, needs to work together with the owners of that site. They want to do something with that. I think it's been a missed opportunity, not by this administration, it's been for a long time. And it's just overdue that I know the mayor's support with doing something with Memorial, and I hope that we can do something with that whole, what's referred to as the gateway entrance or super block. We just passed, the council just passed something else that I think is great, which is we're going to have a council on aging in Burlington. That's been something that people were interested in for quite some time. We are the city stepping up again with the mayor and the council in helping make sure that the Heidelberg Senior Center just had some financial issues. We're making sure that there's an investment from the city this year, that they will continue to support them and they'll be able to stay functioning, delivering services to seniors. But this council on aging, I think, is really important. It's now going to be decided by Parks, CEDO, and the CDNR committee how it's going to be implemented as to who's going to serve on it, how it's going to be staffed, et cetera. But there will definitely be seniors in Burlington serving on the council on aging. There'll be an opportunity to advocate on issues around transportation and a whole variety of issues, and will increase community engagement for seniors. I know my time's been around fast here, but I do want to talk about Burlington Telecom. I personally, and I know there's 8 councilors that disagree with me, obviously, and the mayor had a proposal that was, I think, a relatively conservative proposal to use $2.4 million out of the 5.3. I know it was more, but some of that money is spoken for. I think that Burlington Telecom has been a story of redemption over the last few years. You know the problems that it had early on with a previous administration. But after the restructuring companies came in a few years ago and started running it more like a business, it has been extremely successful. I remember the press conference that the mayor had when we started the bidding process, because of court settlement, we had to sell Burlington Telecom. In that bidding process, the mayor had a press conference where he talked about this great success story that Burlington Telecom was. And councilors said the same thing, talked about the incredible success story and the trajectory that Burlington Telecom was on at the time. That was well over 2 years ago, and the numbers have only gotten better since then. And in the meantime, Shores, a company that owns other telecom companies that have already been through what Burlington Telecom's done. For example, they're getting ready to do a build out in other communities where there's going to be really some significant additional profits to be made. I think that it would have been well served for the city to invest the $2.4 million. We had potential great dividends to come back to the city. And we also had a provision that would have protected us every year. We would have had the ability to sell back our shares. So we were never really risking 2.3 or 2.3 million. My time's up, but we were never really risking 2.3 million because those shares were never going to go down to zero in the course of any 1 year or anything close to that, where the potential dividends and rewards were far, far greater. In my view, the potential reward was far outweighed the risk. It was a missed opportunity.
So I'll start off with the fact that tomorrow at noon there'll be an update for Frank Apollino, North District City Councilor. How's everybody doing? So tomorrow there's going to be an update from Brookfield, noon, on Contoys, open to the public. And I think that's important. There was a couple months back we talked about the numbers and the new plan and the design. There's been a little bit of tweaking in their numbers, not really the general design. So, according to the public information, it's going to be 357 new rental units, 72 affordable units, 45,000 square feet of frontage, retail space, 196 rooms at the hotel, and parking for 550 cars. So I think that's a really exciting place that we're in. We're sort of gearing up to this final, this public meeting update is part of sort of the beginning process of their new permit application that they have to do. I suspect they'll be here once all that is approved and finalized in presenting what they have. Other exciting things that have happened, we took a very big vote. Kurt just talked about BT. That does open up 2.4 million that I believe will go to a special fund for essentially us to decide what to do with. And I think Kurt explained his position well. We voted on Moran, so finally Moran's going to have some action. There's been a lot of work that went into that. Obviously, CETO did a lot of work to get us here. We should see action. This Parks and Rec is here, so it's always hard for me to talk about things when people who actually do this are here, and the mayor's here who's like really led the charge on this. So, you know, I think, as the mayor said, you know, for 30 years that plant's sat unused, it's going to be demoed, and hopefully by next year we're going to see something there that's going to be quite beautiful and stunning. Other exciting things that I know people are really into is ADUs. So we voted on ADUs. There was a lot. We spoke about it a few times here, and you know that passed. And so accessory dwelling units. So from now on, you know, if you live in the New North End, low residential, you know, low density residential, you can build a unit on your property. It's either attached, detached, top, above. It could be an existing room. You can choose to live in that unit and rent out a bigger space. That unit can be up to 800 square feet or 30% of your square footage, whatever is lesser. And you know, you're not required to create a new parking space anymore. We're working on fixing the sprinkler system requirement. And my time.
Time for questions.
I have time for questions. Does anybody have a question?
Yeah, right here.
Mr. Hardin.
Thank you.
I know what you're going to ask.
So I'm going to ask a big ask here because it's going to be about Burlington Telecom, and so it's really an ask. We gave up an opportunity of ownership in this wonderful asset with that vote 2 Mondays ago. It was a short-sighted vote on the council. It was really kind of not well presented by the mayor. I will say that. He kind of put it out there that he was in for the investment, but behind the scenes, he didn't work very hard. We've given up more than just an opportunity to make money on Burlington Telecom. We've given up a seat at the board of directors. We've given up any potential ownership. We've given up on potential resources down the road for sure. Okay, this is a wonderful investment that the city has. It has made a lot of people a lot of money. Blue Water, the P-Corp family invested $6 million. They got $6 million of their own money back, plus $6 million. In 3 years, they made $6 million. Citibank got half their money back. Dorman and Fawcett made millions off this company. So this company that was worth peanuts at one time, right? That destroyed our city is now blossoming. And we have an opportunity.
Okay,
Here's the question. The question is, would you please reconsider your vote? You have until the next council meeting. You voted the majority. The council could reconsider this. It's that important that the councils that voted no to reinvest, reconsider your vote, please, Franklin.
That's it. Unfortunately, that used up all the time.
Okay, unfortunately, I've been told this is used up all the time for questions from the city council, so we can go on to our next.
But David, it was what we sold.
Wait, pardon me. We have people in the front of the room who have the mic.
That's when we lost BT.
All right.
You had a potential ownership.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper, for allowing me to go. Should I present myself?
Yes.
Not that I should, no, but I'm Ali Jang, the City Council for Ward 7. And I think I will start by talking about Burlington Telecom. Maybe many of you have not any idea that it was being even considered to invest or not. Because none of our city councils did engage us into this discussion. None. And the idea as to why the city voted not to invest, just look at the number of people who voted, 12 councillors, 8 to 3. It was defeated because there are so many risks that many people do not tell you. For more information, I request to please go to my website, alijang.com. Councillor John Shannon from South End did request for all those findings to be shared by the community. You go to board doc today, you'll find it there. All the risks associated to investing back some of the sale proceeds to Burlington Telecom. You'll find it there. Okay? Burlington, we need stability. We need to get our priorities straight. Educating our children and also making sure that everyone is safe here. Making sure also that your tax money is not wasted. We don't play lotteries here. We cannot afford it. We don't know if even they will be able to extend outside of Burlington. They have to go through the regulatory processes. We don't know. The city did not request advice from an independent entity who knows about telecommunication. We just received assumptions from Schwartz. I requested it, the mayor's here. I requested it or we get advice. We did not get it. One board seat is not giving us any power into that company. And again, Schwartz is part of Champlain Broadband, which is a corporate company. The corporate company, their decisions are made on the top level. I'm not even talking about the local board here. 7, and one of them is representing the city. So much more, so much more. And the hardest one for me, if the city could be brought to court for investing city money into a private company. Would I take those risks? All of these projects that people are talking about, no one engaged you into that discussion. We are there to make the best decision based on the information that we have. Burlington Telecom, I am glad it's over. I am glad as a community we have the opportunity now to move forward. Go to my website to get more information. I wanted to talk about other stuff. My time is up. Thank you.
He's got 2 minutes for questions.
2 minutes for questions. So does anyone have a question for Ollie?
What else did you want to say?
Yes. There are other things that are important in the city and we don't share about. The last city council meeting, it was full of young people who came to ask the city to vote the non-mass all-immigrant policy. And we did ask them to come back on the night. Show up to make sure that the police of Burlington is not going to partner with ICE in sending undocumented community members outside of the city.
Because other people may have questions.
Well, there was one general question. Is there a specific question for Ollie at this time? As there doesn't appear to be.
Okay, then you can have another
Aye.
5.
Show up strong, Tuesday, March 3rd. Elect the candidates who are on the ballot. They really worked hard to put themselves there. Questions were asked. They went through a vetting process. I think it is imperative for us to open our eyes and make sure that our future is bright for the future. Elect the city officials who can represent you to the best of their ability. Franklin Square, Burlington Housing Authority and the City of Burlington just decided to give Franklin Square Street back to the city. So that neighborhood was really forgotten, but now we have great processes to move it forward. There are also one important point, which is Moran Plan. The Moran Plan, personally, I voted no. I did vote no on Moran. And for that, go again to my website for more details. Thank you very much for having me. See you on the ballot Tuesday.
So I'm Bob Hooper. I'm your Montpelier connection. I bring greetings and apologies from Carol and Jean. We got out at 6 o'clock tonight after an ungodly amount of discussion about marijuana, and they both had committee work to do. Tonight we did, though, send the bill back to the Senate in agreement on the proposal to pass S54, which is the recreational sale of marijuana. Burlington at some point in time will get the decision as to whether or not you want to allow that in your community. If you do, there will be certain financial benefits, and there probably will be some social other things. But the thing to remember is, as we know from skate shop and the building across from City Hall, we did not legalize, or we did not create a marijuana market. We are simply trying to control one, because the gray market exists and is flourishing here. Tim mentioned the House bill of minimum wage. I don't think it impacts us at all. You can walk into Colchester McDonald's, don't tell my wife I was there, and there'll be a sign in the door that says, we'll pay you 12 bucks. That's a 2-year window for us here. But in the rest of the state, where the economic principles of supply and demand with labor are not working the way they're supposed to, you can consider this to be an economic engine, because when you have money in your pocket, you're going to go into Dave's store and you're going to buy something. And that's going to go through the system and make things better for everybody. We tonight did 54. We have also been doing a lot of work in my committee, which is House Government Operations, on work that's done with the Criminal Justice Training Council, which is where the state police and all the sheriffs and other town police officers get trained in the state. Talking about de-escalation principles, talking about impartial policing, talking about use of deadly force, and incorporating the domestic violence issue into it also in terms of gun control. A lot of people are really dismayed in the rural sections of the state about the idea that a relief from abuse order can result in somebody coming into your house and saying, give me all your guns. However, that is the most prevalent instance of people getting shot. And it's sort of like, you want the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness right, or do you want the I can have as many guns as I want right? That's the trade that in some degree a civil society has to make. S47 is another bill that we're dealing with. Campaign finance, it's going to change the way that corporations are able to finance political campaigns for individuals. It'll probably be a hot topic. Bill that I introduced that has not gotten a lot of traction, it's been heard in the committee, but I think we put a lot of money on the table when a lot of the major property in town that has been on the tax-free list gets sold to developers. I look at the orphanage, I'm going to look at the Catholic Church property downtown and up on the hill. I stuck in a bill that basically said when it goes from nonprofit hands to developer hands, the city gets to claw back some of the money that we put into the property in terms of every time the toilet was flushed, every time a glass of water was spilled, every time a fire engine showed up. And unless they were paying pilot, the city got no real payback for those items. The last thing that I found very interesting in this time of having probably 50 bills on our wall that need attention is we took up a bill about cows and pigs running around in town and passed it. It was amazing. Support the ambulance. 9 years ago when Moreau came to Russ and Nancy's house for his first campaign appearance in this end of town, that was the first question I asked him. Why don't we have an ambulance out here? 9 years later, looks like it's coming to fruition. Questions?
You only got one question.
One question.
You went over on your time. Yeah?
First the microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much for your leadership in the House. Could you elaborate what I thought I heard you say, which was quite amazing to me? So, property in the city of Burlington that is heretofore non-taxable, thank you, and sold to a developer that sale and afterwards that property would be subject to property taxes. Did I understand that correctly? And why is that a recent development? And then my third question is, sorry.
We have time for one question.
What are the chances of success?
So I'll add that first. There's a regular property transfer tax and things like that, but it doesn't take into consideration the years, or in the case of the orphanage, the century, plus that no real property tax was paid because they're a tax exempt organization. It was the church. So that's sort of a way to say when the property transfers, the city gets some money out of that deal. And normally you would say the developer is going to say, well, I don't want to pay that. Quite frankly, anytime somebody buys something, the art of the deal is I'm paying this, you're paying that. The price gets massaged between the two. So it's not necessarily out of the developer's pocket. Might just mitigate the sales price.
Is there time for a follow-up?
Not right now.
No, for candidates. You'll be up for candidates.
I'm the only school board member up here.
Yeah, I know, but you're also, because you're running for office, you can't have two slugs at the radar at the same time.
Okay, we're just clarifying that we are trying to be fair to everyone in the room here. There are certain folks who are both candidates as well as currently elected officials. And be fair to everyone, everyone's getting one time to speak tonight, just translating what Linda is telling the candidates, the elected officials in front of the room. So with that, now that all of our elected officials have spoken, let's give them a round of applause for their hard service to the city and the community. And now we have 10 minutes on the agenda to discuss the ballot initiative question with regard to North End ambulance staffing. So if we could kindly invite Chief Locke and his team to the front of the room now. Linda, how much time do we have for presentation? How much for questions?
5 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes for questions.
5 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes for questions.
Okay.
So I know this is a very important issue to
Right up there,
them.
and I'll let you know when you run out of time.
There you go.
All right. You're being mic'd video, so you need to stay in the center. Otherwise, your voice coming out of the back.
Are these markers?
Right there. Good spot, right there.
Good evening. My name is Steve Locke. I am your fire chief and a Ward 4 resident. And joining me tonight is Kyle Blake, who is the president of the Firefighters Association. So question number 2 on the ballot is to raise the tax rate by 3 cents, the public safety tax by 3 cents, which is basically a 3.5% increase for staffing a 30 ambulance here in the new North End. The Burlington Fire Department currently operates 2 ambulances, currently staffs 2 ambulances. There is an ambulance staffed across the street over here on North Avenue, but there are no personnel that respond with it. The personnel there will respond with a fire truck, provide first response, and then an ambulance shows up. We have reached the point where we need another community to come in and provide ambulance services for us on average more than once a day. We don't have capacity, our 2 ambulances are busy, and so it means someone else has to come in, and when that happens, there's a delay, ultimately a delay in service. We give away, or we cannot handle on average about, over the last 2 years, I think it was 460. Well, over the last 2 years, both years, about 460 calls we can't handle because our ambulances are already dependent on other calls. So the proposal that you'll be voting on is whether you support a 3-cent increase that would hire over 9 firefighters, the way we staff our stations and our vehicles, to hire 9 firefighters to staff the 30 ambulance that runs out of this district. This district, the New North End, about 82% of their call volume are medical calls. And so it is the highest percentage of any of our districts, our 5 districts that we break the city into. And so a quicker response time, more likely to have an ambulance available anywhere in the city. And when there is a fire, it gives us 2 more personnel on shift because we currently have a minimum staffing of 20 on duty. This would go to 22. And so we'd have 2 extra personnel available to provide those services. So I think I did that in less than 5 minutes. And so, is there anything I forgot? No?
Just that it's, these are not
You have
just,
to have the money.
I apologize, these are not just EMTs that we're hiring, these are firefighter EMTs that are able to respond to all types of emergencies through the city, car accidents, fires, technical rescue, water rescues. So it really is a force multiplier, especially in this community where you're currently covered by 3 firefighters out of Station 4. So if they turn north on the avenue to go to a fire, they're operating by themselves for a significant amount of time until the rest of the city resources can come. So by adding these 2 additional firefighters out here, not only will we have a dedicated ambulance, but hopefully we're showing up with 5 firefighters when a house is on fire or there's a significant event out here. So I guess at this point we'll open it up to questions.
So I can ask you the question format, but I just want to mention that 124,000 of
Please
that.
mention it in the question format because we have a lot of folks who want to ask questions about this, so really brief.
So Chief, you said that 82% of the New North End's calls are medical related. How much of that funding will go to new paramedics being trained every single year?
Great question. So in addition to the, part of that 3-cent increase includes about 100,000 for paramedic education. So paramedic is the highest degree hospital care, and we have about 10 paramedics on staff. So I'm a basic EMT, Kyle's an advanced EMT, he can do more skills than me, and the highest level is a paramedic. We have 10 on staff, we want more. This gets us funding for about 3 a year into the pipeline, so we continue to feed the system and continue training for them. Great question.
You have some mics that we can? All right.
Thank you for being here tonight and answering questions. Can you speak to why we are seeing a tax increase rather than this coming out of the rest of the city's budget?
I'll say this, so as you know, I've done, I just finished a short stint as the Chief Administrative Officer, interim acting, and I will tell you, in my opinion, the city budget is extremely lean. You'll see every department has really goes through a process every year of developing a budget that, and another department head is in the room, that seldom increases our bottom line. We move money around within our categories, but on top of wages, so the city gets wages increase typically, and then an increase in benefit costs. Those numbers drive up. We have in our operational side almost no capacity to absorb new initiatives, and such as paramedic education or expansion of services. And so this system could not be done without an increase in taxes, in my opinion.
And you mean your system? You say.
The additional firefighters could not be hired without additional revenue.
Okay, given that there's other questions in the room, I'd like to spread the wealth. I think there was a question. Oh, sorry. I think there's a question in the back first.
Oh, that's all right. She's there.
No, please, I'd like to share. I think it's very important that we share the wealth around the room, that everyone gets a chance to ask at least one question tonight.
Okay, hi. Thank you. I was just wondering, when you have to bring in other community services, ambulances from other communities, is there a cost to the city? Or do we lose money? Is there?
So 2 things. No, there's not a cost.
Okay.
Yes, we typically lose money. So every transport generates about $390. So this vehicle would pick up, we think about we're estimating 160 to 180,000 in additional revenue. But more importantly, we operate under a system called mutual aid. So we'll help you, help us, we'll help you. The problem is we're using help about 460 times a year, and we're giving help about 100 times. That's not really mutual. That's supplanting of services, ultimately. And eventually, someone's going to say, so when we pull Colchester's one ambulance in, they're left unprotected. And eventually what happens is a Colchester rescue chief calls me up and says, hey chief, I want to help you, but I'm responsible for my own community. And so when we're getting ambulances in from Essex, that's a big geographical area that we're pulling from, and that ultimately our system is making that capacity.
And these other services are seeing increases in their call volume.
Sorry.
These other services are seeing increases in their call volume as well. So anytime our ambulance can't respond, our dispatchers need to start calling other places saying, are you available? Can you come in? Nope. Are you available? Can you come in? So we're hoping to reduce the amount of times that the phone tag game needs to happen.
All right, there's another question in the back.
Just a clarifying point. We have a fire truck over there and we have an ambulance over there, and you said that if there's a medical call, that the team will hop in the fire truck, go respond to the call, and then an ambulance will come. Why can't that team just take the different vehicle? Why can't they just hop in the ambulance?
Sure, great question. A lot of people always ask, why do we show up with a code? We do this thing called critical tasking. So we know on a standard medical call that we need a minimum of 4 personnel. So basically, we arrive at your house, one treats the patient, we move in our supplies, we start the treatment, then move that treatment to the ambulance. It's all based upon critical tasking. You'll see on a cardiac arrest, you'll see 2 fire trucks and an ambulance show up. And you say, well, why not? Why do they need so many? So just the way the system works for high performance CPR, we need the bodies to get that done. And so the best way for that to happen is to show up with enough resources.
One other piece with that is if the fire truck crew moves to the ambulance, they're then responsible for transporting the patient to the hospital, which means the New North End does not have a fire suppression piece here for, I think our calls are averaging about an hour. So the goal is to keep the fire suppression piece here that can respond to other emergencies. We usually have multiple calls happen, at times 2 or 3 medicals, to keep them in your community here more often than they're out of the community.
All right, well, it looks like the time is up. Let's give our firefighters another round of applause.
Thank you for having us.
All right, if I'm following the agenda properly, getting in front of the camera, because that's also very important. We have for the next 20 minutes from 8 o'clock until 8:20. We have 20 minutes set aside to the contested Ward 4 City Council seat. So if I could please invite both Erica Reddick and Sarah Carpenter to the front of the room. They will have 5 minutes to spend a little bit louder. They will have 5 minutes for their personal statements, and followed by 5 minutes for questions.
Or you can do, you want to do 2.5 and then 2.5 and closer? Either way.
I would rather have questions than.
But you have to have an opening.
Okay, let me.
That's good. I just 2.5 minutes.
Okay, 2.5. I'll do it that way. 2.5 for opening, and then questions, and then 2.5 for closing.
Okay, so we're a very dynamic and innovative community here. We'll have 2.5 minutes for each candidate for opening statements. After both opening statements, we'll have 10 minutes for questions, and then 2.5 minutes apiece for closing statements. Is that acceptable to both candidates? Thank you very much. Who would like to begin?
Okay.
Here's the most important thing, the microphone.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to speak up. Many of you know I had lots of years of working with seniors, and I used to come home and my son would say, "Don't use that senior voice on me." So you'll be able to hear me. Sarah Carpenter, Ward 4, lifelong Burlingtonian, and I'm very excited about this opportunity to represent you all. For the last 20 years, I worked as the Executive Director of Vermont Housing and Finance Agency. We were a statewide instrumentality that provided funding for affordable housing throughout the state, but including many in this neighborhood. My career before that was with Cathedral Square Housing. Again, many of you know I was involved with the development of Heineberg Housing, one of my early on events, as well as all of the affordable housing out in this end of town. And I really wanted, when I retired a year ago, to have a continued opportunity to serve this city. I've done lots of work on statewide policy, and I'm really ready to get my hands involved with the Burlington that I love. And I see this as an opportunity. For the years that I worked at VHFA, I was in a position where I could not run for state office. I had a lot of conflicts. Now that I'm sort of freed up and got new time and new energy, I think I can bring it back to you. I've got lots of experience in public finance, running large organizations, and I think I've got some good, fresh ideas to bring to you. And I continue my interest in housing and the quality of the lakes, senior services, getting more services down to this end of the town. And I think also working together with our neighbors on some of the regional issues that plague us. And Burlington can't solve it all. We need to have, I think, more leadership
around working with our neighboring communities.
Hello everyone, my name is Erica Reddick and I'm also running for Ward 4 City Council. I have an accounting business. It's called I Love Your Money. I do accounting consultancy, bookkeeping, and things like that. So I have had a career in accounting for about 20 years now, several years owning my own business. And what I do is actually help businesses come back from the brink of bankruptcy and other problems like that. So businesses, or the city of Burlington, nobody likes to think of it as a business, but it is a business. We have expenses, we have to raise revenue to pay for those expenses. And I am very vehemently against raising any more taxes at this time. I am against all 3 ballot items that include tax increases. I think that those things should come out of the budget. I think that the city council and the mayor could have done a better job at looking for ways to cut expenses to pay for things like public safety. I don't know about you, but to me, granite curbs are a nice to have, not a must have. So I want to bring fiscal responsibility and common sense back to the running of Burlington. I've been asked a bunch about the fact that I'm running as an independent. Apparently I'm the only independent in the city, or first candidate in the city. And I'd like to say that I'm a liberal conservative. I don't really fit well into any of the boxes. I don't fit into the Republican box perfectly, and I don't fit into the Democratic box perfectly. I believe that everyone should have the right to live their lives how they choose, love whom they choose, and do what they like in their own homes and with their private property. And the conservative part of me is we need to preserve our constitutional rights. We need to preserve our ability to choose what we do with our personal property. So to me, in order to preserve my desire for all of you and me to get to do whatever I want and let my free flag fly, we have to preserve our constitutional rights and the things that make this community great. I guess I'll end with that. Thank you.
All right, now we have 10 minutes for questions. Now keep in mind when asking your questions, our goal is to hear the candidates speak. We want to hear your questions too, but the focus is on the candidates. So who has a question for both candidates?
Hi, I'm Karina Driscoll, and I have a joint question here with Ian Christensen. It's a question about the value of community engagement, and it's in 2 parts.
All right, so the first part is, what do you think good community engagement means?
And the second part is, how are we doing here in the New North End, and examples of what we can do better, differently, or more of.
I guess I'll go first this time. Okay, so now I'm trying to remember because that was a lot. So community engagement, obviously incredibly important. This is one of the things I talked about at the AARP candidate forum last week. I'm calling it radical responsibility. So we have this notion that if we pay our taxes and we pay into this fund, that somebody else is going to take care of the seniors down the street. Somebody else is going to take care of those kids. Somebody else is going to make sure that person has a ride to their doctor's appointment. Someone else is going to make sure that somebody's driveway is shoveled. And I don't think that's the way to think about it. I don't think it's the government's responsibility to take care of my neighbor. I think it's my responsibility to take care of my neighbor. So, in my opinion, I think that there are a lot of great opportunities for community engagement here in Burlington. There's, all kinds of things going on at the park, especially in the summertime. We've got this wonderful community dinner before the NPA meeting. But we're not actually getting out there and talking to our neighbors. Now, maybe you guys are different, but can everyone, who has invited people to the NPA meeting? Who has invited their neighbors? Okay, this is a good amount, right? But not everybody's raising their hand. Why is that? Why are we not going to just, before we start expecting the government to do something for us or the government to do better, I think that we should all expect ourselves to do better first. Get out there, take a risk, and talk to your neighbors.
Okay. Again, I got to remember the 2 parts of the question. One was how do we get more engaged? And I think we do these kinds of things, community dinners. I think we do talk to our neighbors, But then I think we sit down and try to problem solve together using the tools that we have already. We have some fine city services, we have some fine non-profit groups, and I've been involved with many of them. They don't always know what's going on in the neighborhoods, so it's our responsibility to bring together those voices and let the city services and the not-for-profits know what we need and organize around it. This is a fine tool, and I think it can be brought to bear even more if given more responsibility and maybe a little more resources to do it. I'm very pleased to hear the city council passed on the Council on Aging. We used to have one many years ago, and it sort of buzzed out, and I think it's time to reconstitute that. I think the second part was how do we get even more engaged, but I think it's still following that same path of sitting down in kind of working groups, identifying tasks that need to be tackled. I think in my other debates I've sort of mentioned that at times I think this end of town is not viewed as a real community. We're sort of looked at as sort of a suburban appendage belonging to the downtown, and we really need to make our voices clear on both residential needs and service needs, but economic needs. Is there more activity that could be done in encouraging entrepreneurs to locate here? Could we do more with our parks? Our parks are fabulous, but could they be more of a center of activity to engage the rest of the city to come to our end of town and really, again, get to know us better and participate better?
All right, next question.
Two quick issues. First of all, please, your opinion and position on the F-35 continuance here. And second, there was talk of a reconsideration of the Southern Connector, Champlain Parkway. What's your opinion on that?
On the F-35, I feel like that's out of the City Council's hands. The U.S. government designed a very poor, ill plane and has made it their aircraft of choice. We have an active military base in the greater Burlington area, and that is something that we need to deal with. I think it's a federal decision, and I'm not sure at this point in time how the Burlington City Council can do it. I do believe at some broader level we should talk about the impact of having an active military base in our community and the pros and cons of that. But I think the F-35 is out of our hands until perhaps we can get a better, more responsive federal government. Because that's their choice. The second question, sir, what was the second part of the question?
Southern Connector.
Southern Connector.
Yes. To be honest, I have not followed that in as much detail as perhaps I should and would if I was your city councilor. I have concerns about primarily how that connector would have, proposal would dump into the King Street area neighborhood, and I think the proposal, if it's being reconsidered, needs to be a lot more sensitive to a number of issues that I think came up early on around the neighborhoods between that. Again, I wish I could be more knowledgeable about it, and if it's reconsidered, all of those issues need to be re-examined.
I have mixed opinions about the F-35. I am a strong supporter of our U.S. military. I believe that it's important for our security and for our safety. I love that the Green Mountain Boys get rated like #1 in the country every year for decades now, and I know that's hyperbole. I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are every year, but it's very close, so I'm very proud of that. I do have concerns about the plane. I actually had someone staying with me who worked on the plane, was an engineer, and so I do have concerns about that. I do have concerns about the runway issues. I have multiple opinions on it, and so it's very hard to say exactly. But you can thank Senator Leahy. I do know that. If you have some issues about it, you can direct those, or questions, you can direct them to Senator Leahy. My understanding is he pushed for those to be here. I'm going to say something that probably everyone in this room is going to hate me for, but I would love to see the CERT get completed. I would. I mean, I know it's been killed for decades now, but I mean, God, the CERC has been getting debated since I was a kid. Can you imagine how much more we could do in the new North End, or how much economic prosperity if we could actually get around the city easier? The new North End really struggles because there's one way in and one way out. There's two ways in and two ways out?
This is just, I have to put you under control.
So one way in and one way out, north on North Ave or south on North Ave is basically how you get out of this neighborhood.
All right,
So,
go on, finish your statement.
so construction, roadways and things do need to be done responsibly, I agree. But the reality is that Burlington is growing, whether we like it or not. And we have to learn that we have to pay for those things. And sometimes it sucks. And sometimes it's inconvenient. And sometimes people have to sacrifice. And it sucks. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't. And anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you.
There's one more question in the audience. I believe time for one more question?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ute. And first of all, I want to take the time to thank both Erica and Sarah for running for office. I think this is awesome, great for both of you. Yes. And applause for doing that. Thank you. And my question to both of you is, what have you done or will do to just look at the issues the other one raises in order to convince the supporters to rather go with your side? Have you looked into that? And if so, just come up with an example if you can. I really would love to hear that. Thank you.
I guess I'll just speak more generally. My style, both in work and personally, is to gather all the facts. So I'm a big data person. I need to understand all of the sides of an issue before I make a decision. And I think once I gather those facts and pieces of information, I can be a good advocate for the position I have chosen or choosing to take. I'm not sure if that was quite your gist. I really do think having open dialogue and open discussion about issues is just key. We shouldn't have facts hidden from us. They should be out to the public. And then my position as your counselor or future counselor is to let you know how I've weighed all of that. I do get frustrated with decisions sometimes that are negotiated and not based on the facts of why you're trying to make a decision.
I am very much in agreement with that. As an accountant, you might imagine I really like numbers. I'm also a very logical and reasonable person. Now that being said, I'm also wicked emotional, as we were discussing previously. So I am the most likely to cry at everything. And everything, I'm very sensitive. I'm like overly empathetic. I think which is why I've done so much work to develop my logic and my reason. Because if we make decisions based out of our emotions rather than what's best, we don't often get the best possible outcome for the most people. So I've already said it. A lot of times there's no good answer. There's no good solution. There's a sucky solution and a sucky solution. You gotta pick which one. So most importantly though, those facts don't mean anything if we don't identify the actual problem that we're trying to face. So we talk a lot about affordability here in Burlington and how it's so expensive. And then we raise taxes to address affordability and we're confused why the cost of living goes up. Right? So the cost of living isn't actually the problem that we need to fix. It's what's causing the cost of living to go up. It's the high taxes, it's the overregulation. You can't build, I don't know if you guys know this, 46% of our grand list is not taxable. If you want to build a 30-unit apartment building, you're going to pay $100,000 in fees and permits before you've drawn a picture or put a shovel in the ground. How do you think that affects the cost of apartments here? Act 250 is awesome. We love the environment, we want to protect it. We have to do it reasonably and rationally. So if we actually care about affordability, we have to look at the root of the problems, not just put Band-Aids on them.
A minute and a half for closing statements for each of the two candidates. Say anything you want to say but haven't had a chance to say just yet.
Forbes magazine just rated Vermont 46 out of 50 for business friendliness. That's why we have our businesses leaving. And that's why we don't have enough revenue to pay for the things that we want. Why are we paying for granite curbs and flower pots when we need an ambulance staffed? Why are we having vanity projects like a brand new City Hall park when we need an ambulance, when Memorial Auditorium is crumbling, when our infrastructure in the South End breaks and we have to boil water? Yes. These are all nice to haves. These are all want to haves. But let me ask you, if you have a nice to have, want to have, you want a new flat screen TV, do you go to your neighbor and tell them that they need to give you the money to pay for it? No, you don't. Because that's silly. That's stealing, for one thing, or extortion, I don't know, something like that. No, we get a second job to pay for it. You cut your budget somewhere else so that you can pay for it. Why is it that the city leadership believes that your pocketbook is open for them to pay for whatever they want? I'm not against all of these things. I'm not against making Burlington beautiful. I'm not against an ambulance. I am, in fact, the most conservative person running for the seat, at least fiscally, for sure. That just doesn't make sense to me. And what I hope for most, no matter who you vote for, of any of the elections, that you look for someone who will have common sense solutions that aren't going to make it harder for you to live here, but easier for the tourists. Thank you. Erica Reddick, Ward 4.
Thanks. You know, I think it will be my job as city councilor to bring the right analysis to the table. And I agree with Erica that we need some common sense. She's presuming that our current staff and city councils have not done that. And I think we need to really approach all of this with an open mind. Fixing a stormwater granite curb does not pay for an ongoing paramedic salary. One-time capital funds don't open up the pocketbook. One of the elephants in the room and the discussions that we've got to have is the school budget is driving our taxes. We have a wonderful system and we need to keep it, but part of that drive is the way we get our state aid education formula, or conversely don't. So we need to sort of fix that problem, and at the same time have a livable city. People are not leaving Burlington. They're moving into Burlington. Businesses are moving into Burlington. I think sometimes the rhetoric with the rural part of the state gets confused with Chittenden County. The state as a whole has some tough issues, but they're very different from Burlington and Chittenden County. We are suffering some growing pains, and we need to remain on top of them and really understand how they're impacting us. But we have a plus. Our vacancy rate is the lowest in the whole region in New England, and that's because people want to live here. So the way we manage the city is really different than I think some of the conversations we're having at the state level. Having said that, we need to partner more with the state because Burlington cannot be the solver of all of the epidemic crises that we have in the state, and we've got to work with our neighboring communities to solve some of those.
All right, let's thank our two candidates from Ward 4. Amazing job that both of them are doing for something where there's no guarantee that they get to volunteer many of their evenings and weekends for us. Okay, and now we have a half an hour for candidates from a number of uncontested seats. We still want to hear from them nonetheless because we are a democracy. So if we could invite all the candidates from uncontested seats who have not yet had a chance to speak in the front of the room to come to the room now. With the exception of the candidates for the Ward 7 Inspector of Elections, they have 10 minutes at the end.
It's a different role. It's a different role. Always should be in the uncontested race too.
That's not.
But that was a different role. He was a city council. We weren't asking him any questions as a candidate. It's actually not quite kosher.
All right. Do we have any other? We have a number on the list. Mr. Betzer, Milliken, Kulik, Ivanchik. Betzer. All right.
Yeah, I know. That's why I gave you those gentlemen.
Okay, well, thank you very much. All right, so the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for each of you. This includes your Q&A time, so you can use that 5 minutes as you see fit.
What I will do is 3-minute notice and then you have questions.
So the candidates will get
to talk and then we'll give you 2 minutes.
So each candidate will get a 3-minute warning, and then there'll be 2 minutes for Q&A or to continue to talk.
Hey all, I'm Noah Detzer. I'm the candidate for the Ward 4 Inspector of Elections. I'll make this relatively brief. I was born in Burlington and grew up in White River Junction. I started teaching down there, moved up to Burlington 3 years ago, and currently teach at Burlington High School, English and film. I've been pretty involved in the Burlington political scene up here. Super excited to be in Ward 4. I actually moved in last May and was welcomed in by Nancy Ellis and Sarah Carpenter and Keenan Christensen among others. And it's been a fantastic experience so far. I felt like the best way to kind of give back then is to start as an Inspector of Elections, and I appreciate your consideration. I don't know if there are necessarily any questions or anything like that, but if you have any, I'm happy to take them now.
We have the mic in the middle of the room.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The mic is on its way.
Who's up next?
Here you go, thanks.
My name's Janet Patterson. As Inspector of Elections, what are we doing to prevent interference by the Russians?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I think the question was asked, what are we doing to prevent interference from the Russians?
Or anybody.
Or anybody. I think Jim Condos, as Secretary of State, has done a fantastic job of making sure that elections are as secure as possible. And I've been really impressed with his leadership on this issue for the last couple of years. For me personally, I don't anticipate that Ward 4 is going to be a hotbed of activity for Russian interference. But again, that's going to be my job to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I'm going to go ahead and take Jim Condos' leadership on this, kind of like I said before. But yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly important that in any democracy that elections are fair, open.
Other questions? What inspired you to run?
I've been involved in politics since I think down in Hartford when Bernie Sanders' campaign office opened up down there. I got really involved in volunteering, doing canvassing and that sort of thing, and then moved up to Burlington because I felt like in Hartford it was great to be involved in the process down there, but I was town chair for about a year, and I felt like there was more that I wanted to do. I really wanted to dig into campaigns specifically and work on elected candidates who reflected the progressive values that I felt. So I moved up to Burlington to try to get a handle on that. I think the most significant of this was I lived in the Northeast Kingdom and worked with Martha Allen, who was the former president of the Vermont NPA, to try to elect her to the State House, and then have now been working with Sarah and hope to see her take a Ward 4 seat on Tuesday. So I think mostly it's about really believing the process, seeing just how important it is to make sure that candidates are elected who have those values and who are committed to serving their community. And so I felt like I've been doing a lot of work kind of for campaigns behind the scenes, but I thought it was time to kind of walk the walk and make sure that I was stepping up and taking an active role. Thanks.
All right, next.
Hi everyone, my name is Monica Ivancic, and currently I'm serving as your Ward 7 School Commissioner. I've lived in Burlington just about almost 6 years, moved here from Madison, Wisconsin, moved to the new North End. Memorial Day weekend will be 5 years ago. I live over there on Brandywine Street in the Village Green neighborhood, and I have a daughter in the district. My daughter's now at Hunt in 6th grade, and she was a student when we first came to town at Edmonds, at IAA, at SA, and then also at IAA. So I kind of have experience at a lot of schools. In addition, my husband is a paraeducator at Champlain School. So currently I'm serving my first term on the board, and the current board, when I came in almost 2 years ago, a lot of us were new, and we brought about a lot of positive changes to our school district. Some of the things that we've accomplished, we've created committees so that we can get a handle on multifaceted aspects of our district. We've changed policies such that stakeholders' opinions are included in leadership hiring. So when different schools are hiring principals, that we make sure that the teachers are included in that decision, and also that the PTO, the parents, are included in those decisions. We stopped the construction of 2 buildings in the city. If you recall, I think this summer will be 2 years that they were supposed to put up buildings, one right out here at C.P. Smith, a pre-kindergarten building, and one on the south end of town. And those were controversial buildings in our city, or and the citizens weren't happy with that. We still have an issue with figuring out where are we gonna house pre-K. So other positive changes that we made was we brought funding directly into the classroom. Last school year, we approved positions at Flynn and Sustainability Academy that have a high free and reduced lunch population and a high EL population. And this year, we increased library funding at magnet schools, both of which have high populations of FRL students and EL students. Since I've been on the board, I've been co-chairing the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and we, at our meetings, we discuss bullying at schools. We invite our SROs, safety resource officers, which are police officers that staff most of our buildings, and talk about data tracking. And so essentially, we would like to reduce the school to prison pipeline, and of course, make sure that everyone feels included in our school district, no matter how diverse. Make sure everything's equitable. Another thing that we did a year and a half ago, we passed the VHS bond, and thank you to all of you for your yes vote on this. So Burlington overwhelmingly approved the $70 million bond to renovate our high school. We also doubled funds for restorative practices, and approved a PPIS coordinator in the school district. So since my time's up, I have some sheets up there about the school budget, so please take one. And I would like to invite each and every one of you next Thursday, I believe it's from 6 to 8 at the VHS auditorium, to come help us interview the 3 final candidates for our new superintendent. 2 minutes for questions.
There is a question in the back of the room.
Monica, thank you for serving on the school board. I know it's a lot of responsibility. That's not a question, so I'll get right to it. So what is, as we look forward to having a new superintendent, what do you think is what are the most important qualities that we should be looking for in our next superintendent?
I think we need a good organizer, that will, I think one of our problems is that the organization within the district isn't very strong. And so this job is for somebody who is willing to roll up their sleeves and really get work done. Let's see, Dan French, our Secretary of Education, came and spoke with us, and he would like us to become a flagship district. And so I believe this is a position for someone with some previous experience that knows how our district is organized. And also, I think an important thing for our community is Burlington is fairly unique. We have a lot of parent involvement in our schools and how everything's run. And so they have to have a feel of our community and what we expect.
There's a question on, Mike is on its way here right now.
One of the things I hear, and if you could explain the issue that Burlington is not receiving kind of its fair share in ABAC, and particularly this discussion of the weighting formula and how that kind of impacts us. As I understand it, that's how they weight the needs of our students, and that we may not be fairly considered in that formula.
So the weighting, the pupil weighting is, every pupil is one pupil, but a student that is qualified for free and reduced lunch, that counts as an additional 0.2. So we have a lot of students that are worth 1.2 pupils in our district. However, a lot of the students that have the free and reduced lunch are also EL students. So they need extra time and attention with learning English. Now that pupil is not counted as 1.4. That pupil is still at 1.2. And so using that formula, we're not getting enough funds into our district from the state government. And so I'm supportive of this initiative that the city council passed a few weeks back to increase the pupil weighting to make it more fair with the rest of the state.
Monica, I was just wondering, Monica, if the 3 candidates that have been your finalists, have they been made public?
Yes, they are. If you go to the school district website, escbt.org, just scroll down and it's like the first link.
And I will, by any chance, I know it was a national search, but is there any local Vermont candidates for the job?
Yes, there are.
Okay, good.
2 of them are. One came from Oregon, but he is now serving as the superintendent in Addison County.
Perfect. Great.
I have a question about.
Unfortunately, time is up now. Sorry, I have to.
I would like to ask some questions, please. I won't have much to say.
No, do it. We have time, an agenda. We'll follow the agenda. If there's time at the end, we'll allow for extra questions.
Okay, so so if there's extra time at the end, you'll be the first one to get your question if there's extra time at the end.
My name is Sal Millichamp. I nominated to the award for election clerk. I went to the caucus. It was quite exciting. I was thrilled, all the hands going up. And then suddenly my name was thrown out there. And I kind of didn't know what hit me. Now I feel very honored to be nominated for election clerk. As you all, I'm sure, feel it's very important that the election runs smoothly, that it's honest and fair, and part of our democracy. And so I feel like this is such an honor. I met with Jim Holloway and spoken to the people down in City Hall, and I plan on being there on Monday to watch everything get set up and meet all the volunteers that have been so involved, and of course be there all day on Tuesday. Any questions?
Any questions?
So be prepared to learn a lot of detail, and those volunteers actually do get paid. But
Okay, what is your question, please?
I just wanted to say, welcome.
Thank you.
Other questions? Linda?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes, so.
Okay, so as promised, we have some extra time, so we have time for your question.
My question is for Monica regarding the high school. So before they tear down, I think it's the F building they're talking about tearing down, is it being considered that maybe they can be the pre-K buildings?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay, because I asked that when we were going through the whole building process and was told absolutely not. And I'm just wondering why that can't be considered, given that the school budget is 2/3 of all of our taxes. Why would you throw away buildings when we need buildings?
Yes, and it costs money to tear down buildings too. So
Why not use them for
needed things?
All right, do we have any more time for general questions?
Yeah,
or-
we gotta.
So any more questions for the panel that's in the front of the room right now? All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to Ward 7 Inspector of Elections, Jeff Comstock and Jacob Schumann. Okay, and as they're coming to the front of the room, it's very important, if you have the ability and time to stay and help us to put away tables and chairs afterwards, that would be greatly appreciated.
Could I just say, these plants around on the tables are for people to take home. They're very easy to take care of. They don't need much water. They're seedlings that were brought, the plants on the table were brought to the dinner before this meeting, and they're available if anybody wants to take them home. They don't require much care, and they are in need of homes.
So if you're interested in taking care of some recently homeless plants, please take the table decorations home with you. And now,
And the signs, don't forget to vote on Tuesday.
okay, I'm not allowed to say that. And now the Ward 7 Inspector of Elections, Jeff Comstock and Jacob Schumann. Who would like to go first?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Comstock. Nancy and I have been working at the polls here in Ward 7 for the past 2 years. And this will be our third town meeting day coming up this year. And so earlier this winter, I learned that one of the current inspectors of elections has decided not to run again. And so our ward clerk, Tom Fleury, recommended that I consider running for that position. And at first I was sort of skeptical about that, but then eventually decided to say yes. And now I'm actually getting excited about the potential opportunity. I've been a resident of the new North End for over 40 years now, some of that time in Ward 7 and some of it in Ward 4. And I originally grew up at the south end of Burlington in Ward 5. So other than time away working for Uncle Sam and coming back here to go to school, I lived in Burlington and Vermont for pretty much most of my entire life, so I feel well acquainted with the neighborhood. And so I talked a little bit earlier about sort of the role of Inspector of Elections, and I've learned
If we
that...
could wait with removing the tables and chairs until everyone's done speaking, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll wrap up in that I've learned in the last couple of years that a lot of interesting work takes place in the evening after polls close, and that work is the leadership responsibility of the ward clerk, the inspectors of elections, and the dedicated poll workers who stick around until the wee hours of the morning quite often. So I would very much like you to ask for your consideration for this position, and I'll turn the mic over to Jake.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, my name is Jake Schumann. I go by Jake or Jacob, but you will find me on the ballot as Jake. I have lived in Burlington since I was an 18-year-old lad. And to get, I guess, to the point here, I'd like to revisit Karina and Keenan's question about the idea of civic engagement and what it means to participate in your community. Tonight, you know, I don't like coming to the NPA meetings. I'm not gonna lie. They're just not my thing. But when I come here tonight, I can look around the room, I can see a lot of faces that I know, and a lot of the people that I know have left subsequently. But tonight in this room, probably 1 in 3 people I knew. And every single person without exception I knew because of my civic engagement. I've done a lot of things in this city for the 11 years that I've lived here. Starting in 2012, I was an election official. I started in Ward 3, moved to Ward 5, joined the Ward for the Registration of Voters, and in that capacity I worked in every ward. I also helped create a Get Out the Vote and registration drive with that committee. I see a problem in our society today, and that problem is that it seems ubiquitous that people believe I am a taxpayer, I have the right to make demands of my government, and that's it. I think that it is very important for us to engage with our community. We need to be involved, and I think that everyone needs to be doing something. Right now, I am the site coordinator for the dog park, and I really like that. But what I like even more is working at polls. It's a really hectic day, and I love that. When I started in 2012, we had just gone through a redistricting, and everyone who was coming through that door was really excited to vote for Barack Obama. So we had very high voter turnout, and everyone was coming in, and nobody had any idea where they needed to go. So I was just standing there going, what's your address? What's your address? Go here, go there, go there. There were 3 different places to send people, and I just had to do it based on their address. Very quick, that's what I like. So I brought 2 pieces of paper today because I wanted you to know that I am running as a progressive, but I also got the Democratic Party endorsement. And I was planning on running myself against Jeff, but I was just going to run for myself, figuring Jeff would run for himself. No partisanship here. But things have changed. And I think that there is an important point that my neighbor has encouraged me to bring to the attention of the voters. In 2018, we had 2 very large issues in our country. In North Carolina, we had to redo an entire congressional election because of bad actors changing people's ballots. And in Georgia, the Secretary of State running for governor disenfranchised hundreds of thousands of voters and effectively stole the election from Stacey Abrams. So what are the mechanisms by which these things happen? I think it's important for you guys to know that right after I filed my paperwork to run for this election, I got a letter from code enforcement saying that somebody had filed a grievance against me for my zoning. And so when the code enforcement officer came to my house and we had a conversation, I found out that it was related to this race. And so I think it is important for you to know that the way that our elections become compromised, to get to your question, is when people suffer reprisals for running. So I have nothing against you, Jeff. I have nothing against your family. I just think that 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 was a bad transaction.
I would like to respond. I think you should respond.
Okay, gladly. Actually, the way that came about, and yes, it was me that filed that zoning complaint against you for the inquiry with code enforcement, because I was curious where you live. And so I looked it up in the city tax records, and your parcel was zoned as residential vacant land. And so my question for the city clerk's office was, how is it possible for someone to put their name on the ballot and run in an election based on a residency that is not a legal zone residence? Okay? So I did learn in the process that that your eligibility to vote and your legal residence, so you're living in a tiny house on a parcel of land at the Mountain River, okay? So, so I did learn that if that is your legal residence and your mailing address, that that does essentially establish your legal right to vote as a resident of Burlington. My concern with that, however, is that because that parcel in the building is zoned as vacant land, it's not zoned for residential occupations, that you're essentially been paying taxes on a parcel of land as a residence that's not really a residence. And my feeling on that is the fact that if we're entrusted in this job, we're responsible for being neutral and fair arbitrators of voting election law, that it seemed disingenuous to me that, or irresponsible or inappropriate, that you would be seeking a position of that type of responsibility and yet knowingly or willfully violating zoning requirements and not paying your fair share of property taxes. So, I acknowledge I am responsible for that.
We got the times up, so I think we're
Yeah, well,
ready for
I
questions.
We
think
got
this
questions.
conversation really is probably getting beyond the point of what it should be at public meeting.
Okay, so given that I think the main points have been covered and apologies have been made, or at least acknowledgements have been made, is there time for questions?
Yeah, as long as it's not on that topic.
Okay,
It goes to their jobs as inspectors.
Yes.
Okay, there is a question in the back.
Jeff, you and I worked elections here. That's how I met you. And the last election, you came to me when I was working the books, and you asked me if I would tell you the names of some people who had voted a few minutes earlier. You had a concern that they did not seem to be qualified. They didn't look right to you. I told you that my job was to give ballots to people who were registered to vote. I was, however, quite concerned at your question. I would like you to explain to us, please, how that incident aligns with your desire to be an inspector of elections.
Yes, certainly. If I'm remembering that circumstance correctly, it was because it was a family that came in to vote with a middle-aged son and two elderly parents who had brought in absentee ballots, and they hadn't mailed their absentee ballots into the city clerk's office. They brought them with them, and they were submitting absentee ballots without a signature. And so I had concern that whether those folks were actually legitimately registered to vote and whether that was appropriate. And I mentioned that to the ward clerk, and he confirmed their eligibility with the voter registration person.
Other questions?
Over here.
Yes, in the middle.
As your job as an inspector of elections, who in the day of the voting is your boss? Who looks over your work, both of you? I want to make sure that my vote is counted and fairly, and everybody else who comes here to vote is fairly counted. Who's your boss?
Tom Fleury, the ward clerk, is the primary supervisor of the polling place and works in collaboration with the 3 inspectors of election in each ward.
Well, as an elected official, you are my boss. And the way that polling places work is that there are 4 different roles. You have the ward clerk, you have the inspector of election, you have the election officials, and then you have the city. And it's important that each of these individuals or group of individuals have different roles and responsibilities. And so, I'm sorry, the city, the 4th is delegated to the board for the registration of voters. So each of these 4 groups or individuals, each has their own job that they are responsible for. And it's important that things happen in agreement with each other. The only supervisory role that takes place at a polling place is the ward clerk supervises the assistant election officials. Otherwise, things are supposed to happen in concert. There are chain of custody protocols. And for example, if a voter asks for help filling out a ballot to inspectors of election of opposing party affiliations. You know, it's been a few years since I've worked at a polling place, so some of the minutiae of what I just discussed might not be exact, but yes, as an elected official, you are our boss.
All right, well, thank you very much. In the interest of getting us done by 9 o'clock and being on time, I'd like to thank our final candidates from the front of the room. I'd give a round of applause. As closing public service announcements that I would like to make. The first is that I'd like to thank our organizers of the community dinners one more time. Let's give Keenan, Corinne, everyone else if you have the time and the ability, or even if you don't have the time and the ability, please, Corinne and Keenan are in the back of the room now. They've been here the whole time I've been here. They've been here even longer than that. Please, if you're interested in supporting community dinners, please talk to them after the meeting. In addition, if you are interested in being part of the NPA steering committee, it's more than just coming to NPA meetings. If the NPA steering committee members, current ones, can raise their hands, indicate to the room who we are. If you are interested in being part of the NPA steering committee, we meet the first Wednesday of the month here in the Miller Center. And if you want, for example, if you have particular views, and there have been views expressed earlier tonight about potentially better ways to run these public forums, the place to discuss this is at the NPA steering committee meeting. So please, if you're interested in forming future agendas for our meetings, forming how we discuss about our democracy, please come join our NPA steering committee. It's the first Wednesday of the month. And for those of you who can't, we do publish the agenda for the meeting several weeks in advance, both through Front Porch Forum, through Facebook, through other media. So if you happen to see the agenda when it comes out, you have a second opinion about how the agenda should be formed, please let us know. We're very interested in setting up an agenda which is time efficient and responsible and responsive to the democracy we have here in the New North End. So,
We're done. We're done by 9.
Are we done by 9 o'clock? Well, thank you very much for being seated to the very end.